Hello everybody, I'm Michael Webrow, and in this video I'm going to show how we can conduct testing in iOS apps using Xcode. So in the last video we talked about the importance of testing. Here we're going to look at how we can actually do it. So Xcode provides a dedicated interface for managing tests and running them. And when tests fail, it shows the failures inside the Xcode editor and can point you directly to the test case. And you can see that our source code editor over here understands that some of these methods are test cases. You might find that if you've clicked the button when you created your project and enabled test cases, then you have some pre-generated ones that you can then edit and modify. If you want to create additional ones, you can just click the plus button, and also you can just write methods with a particular name and they get noticed as test cases. So when we're testing iOS apps, we create testing targets. So you've previously had a target that represented the app itself. Here we have additional targets for testing. Within our test targets, we create test case classes, and these are a wrapper around our test cases. Within each of the test case classes, we create individual methods, and these are our individual test cases. For our test cases, we also have a concept of setting up and tearing down additional information or classes that are needed to actually be tested. So think about, and these basically get run before in terms of the setup method, and then after in terms of the teardown method. Each one of our test cases run. And the test cases themselves have the form of having the prefix test, and this is what I meant, that you can just create additional test cases. If you add additional functions into one of these Xcode test case classes, they'll just get recognized as test cases and get added to the test interface. So what are we doing in our setup and teardown method? Well, we're basically creating a system under test. So if we've got a test case and that test case is testing, say, the functionality of a method in a particular class, then typically you're going to need an instance of that class to call the method on. So that class instance is our system under test, or if it's an integration test, then our system under test might be instances of a couple of different classes. So this system under test object gets initialized in our setup method, and we free it in our teardown method. Inside any particular test case, we're usually doing three things. We're typically doing some setup, we're conducting some particular action that we're testing, and then we're checking that it had the desired result. So you can think of this as, given some particular situation, which is putting, say, the instance of a class in a particular state, then calling a method, that's the thing we're testing, and then checking the state of the classes as we expect after that method call. So how do we do that? Well, you might do something like set a value of a class instance. You might then call a method that you're expecting to have some particular change, and then you're going to confirm that that change has happened. In this case, with this Xcode test assert equal. So what is this exactly? So the Xcode test framework gives us a number of ways that we can write assertions that represent our test cases succeeding. If these assertions fail, then the test has failed and we get a message that represents that particular assertion. And all of this is reported and integrated into the Xcode test navigator. So some of the kind of assertions that we have access to are things like Boolean assertions, so where you can check that a value is true or false. You can check whether something's nil. You can check whether an error has been thrown. So we've seen many places where we have code that throws errors, like our decoding when we're using the codable functionality that we've worked with, and there's many more. And when you're thinking about your test cases, you want to think about what can and should be tested. So do you have variables, download functionality, nil checks? Think about this, and you can have a look at the Xcode tests documentation, and this will give lots more information on writing test cases. Okay, thanks for watching.